movement. So get ready for another dynamic journey as we wake up the world to a new era of opportunities and empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, President Larry Ivory.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. My name is Larry Ivory.
Larry
I am
Ivory.
President, CEO
I
of the
was able
Illinois
to
State
hear
Black
you,
Chamber of
but now
Commerce
I'm not
and
able to
Chairman of the
hear
Board
you.
of
We
the
just
National Black
practiced
Chamber of
this.
Commerce.
I'm not sure why he's not coming through. It's on his end. All right, guys. I'm going to get you going, Larry. Let's try it now.
Welcome to the Wake Up Show,
No, we
Chicago. Can
still
you hear
can't
me?
hear you. I just heard you. I don't know.
Oh,
I got to fix it. All right,
got
guys,
you.
you're listening to the Wake Up Show Chicago. I'm your co-host, LaDonna Raeh, and I'm going to get Larry's input message here corrected right about now. I think this will work. All right, Larry, I think I can hear you now.
Hey, welcome to the Wake Up Show, Chicago. My name is Dr. Larry Ivory. I'm the President and CEO of the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce and Chairman of the Board of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. And I am excited again to bring you another exciting topic today dealing with Black economic empowerment, Black business empowerment. And I'm excited. So we're going to get right to it. Let me just give recognition to our excellent, incredible co-host who is not only creative, but just a person who really understands radio business. And I'm glad that she's a part of this show. So this time, the one and only LaDonna Raeh.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Chicago. I am LaDonna Raeh. Definitely happy to be here. You know you can hit those phone lines 773-591-1690. But this is the Wake Up Show. We are powered by the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. Feel free to go to the website during this broadcast and beyond, ilbcc.org. And we are brought to you by Wind Creek Chicago Southland, which is out in Homewood, also known as East Hazel Crest. Each and every Saturday morning, we're here at 9 a.m. So we want you to tune in for this hour of power because it's so important to have you guys tune in on some business stuff. We're going to do little known history facts. And I think I'd be remiss if I wouldn't say the whole introduction. I'm gonna keep it short because I know Larry's like, time. But I want to
Well,
definitely joining us as weekly, doing our little known history facts. You've seen him on screens. He's a storyteller, actor, and he's also a human rights and sex trafficking awareness consultant. So he's going to bring us those little known Black history facts as it ties directly into business. Lorenzo T. Hughes. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you again for having me on the Wake Up Show. I'm going to try to make this quick since we're kind of pressed for time. As I always start out, never before have the pages of history has a nationality of people been so overwhelmingly consumed in the ways and customs of other people. Now, this little known Black history fact, I love this one, and I think you're going to love it too. While white people were fighting to separate themselves from Black dollars and Blacks from white dollars, they were creating an opportunity for Black entrepreneurship to create their own economic empire, which is what O.W. Gurley. He was born December 25th, 1867, and died August 6th of 1935. See, in 1905, he moved his family to the oil booming town of Oklahoma, where he looked at a patch of land in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that white people didn't want. Gurley understood that segregation and racism was not only oppression, but it was a business opportunity disguised as racism. If whites didn't want to serve Black customers and Blacks had to shop somewhere else, Gurley knew if he controlled that somewhere else, then every Black dollar would flow through his hands. And that's what he did. In 1906, Gurley bought 40 acres of land that white Tulsa considered worthless. Downtown, on the other side of the tracks, no place that white folks wanted to build. Gurley opened a grocery store, then a rooming house. Then he started selling plots of land to other business owners, men and women. And within 15 years, that plot of land became what was known as the Greenwood District, Black Wall Street. It became one of the wealthiest Black communities in America. Gurley's plan was so brilliant, he understood that when Black people spent their money in white businesses, that money left the Black community forever. But in Greenwood, when Black people bought groceries in Black grocery stores, that store owner would spend his money in a Black restaurant. The restaurant owner would deposit its money in a black bank. The bank owner would buy insurance from a black insurance owner and allow the bank to also lend money to black business owners and home buyers. Instead of building wealth for white businesses who didn't want to service or do business with black people in the first place. Now, by 1921, Greenwood had more than 10,000 residents, black newspapers, black doctors, black banks, black lawyers, black movie theaters, black repair shops, luxury shops, professional shops, and business owners in Greenwood were living in mansions that would make white racists jealous of the place that people called the Black Wall Street. Now, in closing, racism and segregation had been and is what creates the conditions for black success. Whites continue to enjoy, whites continue to enjoy that success, which now, with that racism, creates an opportunity for us as a nation within a nation. It is imperative that we start building our nation by circulating our black dollars. And that's our little known black history fact. And thank you, O.W. Gurley.
Wow. You think about that, Larry, and I'm like, wait a minute. Black people spend money in black businesses, and then those black businesses spend their money with other black businesses. But that's not happening today.
No, it's not happening often enough, LaDonna. One of the things when we were on Capitol Hill and we were having conversations, and this comes up very often, is that we can't tell everybody else they need to give us an opportunity when we have an opportunity and we can't give it to each other. If we have to make sure that we make a concentrated effort to do the easiest thing there is to do is to do business with one another. To go, instead of going to someone else's, go to your own, make sure that money stays in your community and support each other. That's the first thing we can do that no one can control, that no one can say we can't do. But we're not doing enough of that, quite frankly. So uh, take it to heart. Thanks a lot, Lorenzo, for a little known history fact. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Black Wall Street, but it's always great to hear
The
the
backstory.
summary of the story again and again, because we're missing out on tremendous opportunities to understand why money needs to flow in our hands to one another instead of somebody else. Pardon me.
Okay. Well, I know we did Lobby Day just a couple of weeks ago, and it's not over. Lobby Day is never over, Larry, because just because we bring our campaign to have many individuals join us on that one day, lobbying takes place throughout the year. What are some updates that we have to share with our listening audience about Lobby Day and the results?
Well, I think that right now we there was a number of pieces of legislation that we're going to be checking on next week. I think um, the legislative body will be out, as I understand it. They'll be back in May, and by the end of May, they will have decided the budget and the things and the laws that will be passed by the end of May. So if you got something you want to get done, you got to get it done in May and stay engaged. What we really came out of this thing, Ladonna, was that a lot of people who had never experienced Springfield before had a chance to go down to Springfield and see how it works. They had a chance to sit in the Senate and sit in the House and really understand a little bit more about how they operate. But also, they had a chance to meet with agency leadership to discuss issues. And one of the things that's come out of our CEI commission is that, we give kudos to the CEI commission because they have established a task force, recently established a task force to deal with the sheltered market. And there is probably about 7 or 8 people, as I understand, because I was on the call, where they will be um, working well, not a task force, a committee, and that committee will be responsible for bringing what they consider to be discrimination and pushing to get sheltered markets done. So that's a real step in the right direction. because I don't think that's ever happened before at that level where you have a commitment and leadership that's really putting that on the map. So kudos to them. There's still more
When was the
work to
last
do in
shelter
place.
market? I don't want to leave that out. When was the last one?
The last time Schultz Mark was done, I think, was in 2000, boy,
Was that 18?
2019,
19,
18,
18? Yeah, somewhere around there. That's a
yeah,
long time. So for those of
yeah.
you listening, I want to make sure everybody understands in brief what the sheltered market does for us. Why is that? Why should we care?
Well, to shelter market is one of the most important pieces of legislation dealing with procurement. And what it says is that at every BEP council meeting, there shall be an opportunity to discuss discrimination. If you find there is discrimination, you should add on to existing sheltered market or create a new sheltered market to eradicate the discrimination. It can be negotiated, non-negotiated. What it really means, LaDonna, if it's advertising, because there's only two sheltered markets right now. One is in IT and technology. The other one's in marketing and advertising. That means that if we find that Hispanics and African Americans aren't doing much business in IT, by law, by procurement law, they can establish a sheltered market that will put a certain amount of business in there. It could be millions of dollars. And only those individuals can compete for that particular business in order to overcome the discrimination based upon the documentation that you have. And so there's not a another procurement law that has as much punch to getting degree of equity as that. But again, they have it, but if you don't use it, then what good is it? And they hadn't been using it. We, when I was on the BEP Council, we moved the sheltered market forward. Charlotte Roberts, myself, and Sharon Matthews. And now that we're gone, we hadn't seen much talk about the sheltered market, and now it's coming back to play due to some leadership on with the BEP Council and the CEI Commission to get the sheltered market back in play. So that's the importance of sheltered market. It is one of the most important pieces of legislation in procurement that is a law that we have not been um, moving forward. And now there's a committee designed to address it, and we can follow it, track it, and see where they take it.
That so I know that we use these terms just about on a consistent basis, but I just wanted to make sure that people understood why we need to be concerned about it, because if it's not going to happen automatically. Discrimination is it's evident to us, but it's not always evident in these meetings. Even though we see what's happening, but we can't assume that it's going to just happen automatically. Is your guest going to be calling in, or do we have to make a call to him?
We may want to make the call to him to also, Ladonna, if you have his phone number to reach out to
Yeah,
him.
I do. I
But
do.
as we're waiting for Mr. Patterson to join us, I want to go back that anytime we've had any real significant strides in America, it has not happened out of the goodness of people's heart. It happens because people challenges the status quo. The Voting Rights Act would never have changed if there wasn't people fighting and dying for a right to vote. So we have to understand that we have to understand the rules and the regulations, how policies are crafted, and how you move policy from one committee to the next, and how it gets voted on. And you got to make sure you stay engaged and involved. Your representatives and your legislators are designed basically to protect your interests and to make sure that legislations that are coming forward doesn't hurt you, that it really helps you at the same time. But if we're not engaged, like an organization like the chamber, then a lot of times legislation will get to one house and then one to the Senate. And we didn't even know it existed because no one's engaged in following that legislation. So you kind of hope that your legislators basically will reach out to you if it's something that's impact black business. Then legislators should reach out to the Black Chamber of Commerce, the BLC, to Chicago Minority Suppliers Organization, to make sure they understand and get their input on this legislation, so they don't end up supporting something that it has a detrimental impact upon Black business, and Black business is essential to Black people.
And Larry, let me ask this question because when we talk about you know uh, the sheltered market, because it's something that apparently had to be put in position to protect a class or a group of people. Has there been in the past any violations within the sheltered market, and who is responsible for following up with those complaints or violations of that that fairness?
Well, the shelter market, Lorenzo, has been around for a quite a period of time,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until um, we got involved with it that we brought it to light. And once we brought it to light, because it was there, but no one was using it. They knew about it, in my opinion, but no one had brought it to surface. And
Hmm.
once someone helped me to it, which was Charlotte Roberts, then it was my job as a chamber president to help move that piece of legislation and bring life back to it. So we worked with the governor to do a executive order to make sure that the sheltered market was back on the table. It was a law, and and the violation comes from the fact that, Lorenzo, you can have the sheltered market. First, we got to understand that only people that can declare a sheltered market is the BEP Council. And
Hmm.
once they declare the sheltered market, then you got to go through the implementation, because there's things that it ain't just getting it declared. It's not. It's like construction. It's not just getting the contract. Now you got to get the contract, complete the contract, and then account for the contract. At any point in time, you don't do something, you can undermine that particular contract. So we just can't say, well, we did a shelter market and that was it. Well, did the shelter market work? And I'll give you an example of that real quick. We did a
Right.
shelter market in IT, and IT did over $900 million in sheltered market, 900 million, close to $1 billion. And the people who were left out were African Americans, Hispanics, but what ended up happening that a lot of Indian firms won all of the contracts, over $300 million each of those contracts were, and we got very little, if any. We had no prime contracts, and a few people got some subcontract. So the sheltered market was done, but it defeated the purpose, because the sheltered market says to correct the discrimination. If blacks and Hispanics were discriminated against, then if they got no contract, then how did you correct the discrimination? You didn't. So you got to force people to understand the intent of the law and bring pressure. They're not going to come and say, well, they celebrated and they got it done, but they didn't get it done the right way. So our job as a chamber and other organization is to make sure they get it right and correct it, and make sure the next time we do it, it's done the right way. That there's things that are specific. If only African Americans are being left out, then the sheltered market can specifically state that only African American can compete for the sheltered market opportunity.
Hmm.
If only Hispanics are left out, they can have that for. But if everybody is left out and only white males are getting it, then all parties can participate in it. So it's important for us to understand it, and it's important for us to follow how it goes, because announcing a sheltered market, getting it done, is just the first step. Following it through, taking a look at what went right, what went wrong, understanding how it's done, getting the agencies to do it. There's a lot of the steps that you have to follow in order to make sure that the shelter market is done. It accomplishes what it was designed to accomplish from the very beginning.
There's a way we had talked about possibly presenting ways of tracking even our efforts in going to lobby day. So without it being a complete focus, you have to keep track of everything that takes place with the chamber. Number one, everything that the chamber has done when it comes to black businesses, corporations, fortifying these relationships, but also the conversations that we have where contracts have been solidified. I think the last time we went, so far, we have gotten reports that up to $2 million has been gained because of Lobby Day. Now, how do we track what these agencies have said? Because in those meetings, obviously, we get We've talked about what their responses have been. But now we're getting reports, those we're getting actual reports from these agencies, and the actual should I say the statistics of what has been taking place when it comes to black business. I have a question about, I know that we are part of the minority group. I hate that word. But when we're part of a minority group and they lump us all in together with everybody else, and we already had this conversation, we're in there with white women and disabled individuals and veterans and
Humpback
anybody else.
whales, everybody.
Right, everybody. It makes it so difficult to track the progress of one specific group, and that is us. So because of that, our numbers are much lower, but we're still grouped in together with everyone else. I had this conversation about even the Nielsen numbers. The Nielsen numbers show everybody grouped in with this particular, let's say, black radio station. Okay. But we are not a general we're not a general radio station. There's no way we can be segmented with everybody else when other groups are segmented individually and their numbers appear higher because they're more specified. So when you look at the black businesses in this umbrella of being called a minority, it seems like, and I know some people will listen and say that's being negative, it seems like we will never get our fair share unless we fight for it. And I mean fight harder than we have been fighting, because it seems like it's intentionally being kept from us.
Well, Adonna, you're right on the money. Is that there are a lot of issues when it comes to keeping us at bay, and if you make sure that black people don't have money, don't have wealth, then you are always going to be, because even when you have litigation or any issue, you need money in order to fight. No money, no mission. Real simple. So keep the money from black folks, and you'll always keep black people in a secondary position. Capitalism is about creating wealth, and this is about wealth creation. So, but we have to understand that there are numbers out there, and you can make numbers say anything you want. And you got to be very careful that you got people like Universal and people like Dr. Crowley and others who are data scientist kind of people, yourself, LaDonna, AI, and really break down the numbers, because people can mislead you to make you feel like they're knocking the ball out of the park. And if they're knocking the ball out of the park, then you got no reason to be um, disappointed, or no reason to want for anything else. Say, well, we're doing, I've seen where people said we did 5,000% on our BEP spend. It's like incredible.
Oh,
How do you do 5,000%? It's not true, but it's
yeah.
how they play the number game. Or they can say, well, we did 35%. In reality, they did 0.5%. So we have to be able, that's why the chamber is there, to go talk to leadership and break down the numbers and make sure they're not misleading the community in terms of believing that they're knocking the ball out of the park. And I'll give you an example real quick. You do a $2 billion that have subject to gold, and they got a 20% gold on it. A 20% gold means that that's 20% of $2 billion is 400 million. Okay. And so that's 100% of the goal. So if you get 400 million, you have reached 100% of your goal. But they say, well, we hit 27%. That sounds good. Well, if you take 20% of 400,000, that's $104,000 approximately. And then if you take that and say, well, that's 27% of the 400 million, but the goal was 400 million. It's like taking a test at school. You got 100 questions and you got 27 right. Well, when I went to school, 27 right out of 100
That's an F.
means that you got a big fat F. I mean, that's failing, no matter how you cut the pie. And then if you take that down even one step more and say, okay, well, let's break that down, LaDonna, what you said in terms of everybody commingled together. Of that 27% that you got, what percentage of that came to African Americans? And
Even
what you'll
less.
find out that that number is much lower. When firms tell you that, and they're proud of their numbers, and they never break it down and show you what blacks got, it's a sign that blacks aren't doing well. Because if they're doing well, the first thing they say, Larry, into the chamber, here's what African Americans got. They don't say it because they know that if they can say in a broad sense that white women and Hispanics and everybody else is doing well, you're not supposed to know. And you're not supposed to be able to dig into the numbers and realize that you're really not participating. And so sometimes we even applaud people when they say those numbers because we don't understand those numbers. It's the chamber's job. And as I told someone before, one agency, I said, don't ever come back to my community and give numbers like that again. If not, I'm going to publicly embarrass you. I'm
Hmm.
going to publicly embarrass you if you do that again because it's misleading, it's deceptive, and you make my people believe that we're doing okay. And the fact of the matter is that we're not doing okay. When you break down the numbers, we got a long way to go, and we're going to have to fight for it. We have to continue to fight for it. And, that's
There's,
our
there's a
reality.
there's a risk involved when you do that. When you challenge them, because in everyone, if you look in the rooms when these comments are being made, there's the nod and agree syndrome going on. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? It's like selling a car. I remember when I was selling cars. I was 20 years old. And if I draw on a piece of paper, smiley faces and payment plans and how much the car is, and as long as I look at them and nod, yes, they will nod with me and they sign. That's psychology. So all I think about in this moment is how Lorenzo told me one day. He pointed out how in the movie Hancock, he said, if the police were doing their job, then I wouldn't be here. But when he came back, he said, good job to the police force anyway. So in your case, in this case, if they were doing their job, there would be no need for the chamber. So how can you say that they're doing a good job when the numbers show that they're not? They're not even close.
Well,
Not.
it's deception. But we understand that it's a
Hmm.
numbers game, and they think that we're dumb enough that they can run the number game on us, and we're not look at it. Whether it be the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity that may spend over $536 million in grants, but if only 16 million of that went to African Americans, tell me what percentage of that is. That's little or nothing in terms of African Americans. But the fact of the matter is that they can't win a statewide election without black people. Black people have to understand their value and hold people accountable. And that for the people who are in power and don't want black people to come up and participate, then they may not want to hear our conversation. Okay. And they're never going to tell you that we are anti um, chamber are anti people who challenge us because everybody wants to do the least amount of work and get credit, and they don't want to expand and do the work that needs to be done. And not everybody, but this is a common issue in America. That's why when you take a look at federal contracting, 1.35% of all federal contracts go to African Americans. Those are facts. That's from the Office of Budget and Management, which
Mm-hmm.
means that white males are doing a significant portion, over 97% of all contracts go to white males, but they represent 34 to 36% of the United States population.
Mm-hmm.
That's just unfair, no matter how you cut the pie, because black people are contributing to the tax base. We elect people into office, and quite frankly, if black people didn't show up and vote, then some organizations would be in great trouble. Some parties would be in great trouble. Now, the Republicans would like to see black people stay at home and never vote because that means that they would give them a competitive advantage. But Democrats need black people to vote, but they have to also make sure they're contributing to black people's wealth and business, and that doesn't seem to be much of a priority. Whether it be the speaker, whether it be anyone else, the numbers. If you look at the numbers, guys, and we got some smart people, the numbers tell a different story. And the story is not a good story, but it's a story that we must deal with and say, here's where we're at, here's what the real numbers say, and what we're going to do now to change those numbers. I don't mind with any agency if they say, look, Larry, we're not doing a good job in reference to we need some help. We need to work together with the chamber, with other organizations to improve our numbers. So let's be honest about where our numbers are at. Let's work together as a state or as a country to improve those numbers. And let's find out how to be creative. If there's a reason why, because it may be a reasons why those numbers are down. Maybe enough people aren't bidding. There could be any number of things, but let's be honest about the conversation and don't try to piss on me and tell me it's raining.
Mm.
Insults my intelligence. And
Yeah.
that's really what they do sometimes when they come into meetings. And I find sometimes we got black people applauding when they give you numbers, and it's like you're applauding for a point. You're applauding for less than one half of 1%, and you're applauding.
But they don't say that though. You know, they say it
But
the
it,
way it's presented is to sound like they're like you're
Right, right,
winning.
right.
Okay?
right, right.
Yeah.
But
So
that's the
we
game. But see, the other side of that is that on the government side, on the corporate side, we're seeing significant pullback. And I want to talk about this for a moment because I've talked to chamber leadership in New York, New Jersey, Alabama, Tennessee, around the country. And what we're seeing is that corporate is pulling back. Some corporations are pulling back, and and people are saying, well, it's because uh, we're doing. There's a number of factors that they use. They never come out and say, look, we're cutting back because we believe that the current administration doesn't want to embrace diversity at all, and it's in our best interest to cut out all these things. But as I tell people, whether you be a water company or utility company, black people don't stop buying utility, don't stop paying a utility bill, and they don't stop using water. So when you start cutting back in terms of supporting organizations and your giving, and not your giving just for the sake of giving, but when you cut back on diversity, equity, inclusion, you're sending a message. This is a direct attack upon black people. And that's happening across the country, and it's happening in the state of Illinois. That companies who have traditionally supported black organizations and been supportive are pulling back, and they're having that conversation. I've had that conversation two or three times. And as I tell them, I say, we didn't stop doing this, and we've been supportive of your policies and things like that. We have to make sure that people understand we're not just going to sit by and be okay with it. And for those companies who are not pulling back, but staying committed to their commitment to empower Black people and Black business, we're going to celebrate them. But those who aren't, we're simply going to tell people they're not doing it. And whatever reason they want to give for that is up to them. But we need Black media and everyone involved and engaged in it. Guys, this is a trend. We got to be very careful when things start trending in a negative way that we have to speak out about. We can't wait until it's too late, because when you take away money and resources, it's an attack upon the group like the chamber, who's always fighting for black business. So it's attack upon black business if they don't support, and if we don't get more black business doing business with them, if they don't have money and resources, then that now if someone says, Larry, we're going to cut back our support, but we're going to increase our spend with black businesses, I'd say, well, I can accept that. But
Right.
if you're going to reduce your spend and reduce your participation, but we ain't going to reduce our consumption and our acquisition of your goods, services, product, then that's unfair, and we
Mm.
ought not to be okay with that, in my opinion.
Yeah, Lorenzo.
and Larry, because I'm listening to you talk, and you're using words like fight and attack, and I can't help but be reminded that we have to agree that we are at war, like, and it's an economic war, and we're not only seeing it just around the world, this economic war amongst America, China, Russia, and Africa, but we see it even on the local level when we just talk about doing business. It's
Hmm.
still an economic war. And as I mentioned before, us being a nation within a nation, we're still at war economically as we sit here talking about fighting for contracts, fighting for business, fighting for the right to do X, Y, and Z. We're at an economic war.
Yeah, absolutely. We're like in some cases, I tell people is that you're like in a time of peace, prepare for war. Well, quite frankly, we're warring to get our rightful participation, and take a look at, and I tell people, take a look at transportation. It's funded by motor fuel tax. Take a look at how many blacks are participating in highway construction, but you're funding it. And for us to be okay with numbers, and we got some very talented people at the Department of Transportation, the Secretary of Transportation. we ought to have conversation with her about the numbers, the real numbers, and they ought to, sit down and talk to us and want to talk to us about, okay, what can we do if we can't, since the Federal Highway Administration controls us, what can we do, Larry? What can we do, other organizations, to improve our spend where we can control it? If you don't do that, that tells me you don't care. If you're suffering, LaDonna, and I see it, and I call myself a friend of yours, and I got money and resources, and I don't do anything to help you, then I'm really not your friend.
That's right.
And from a political side, the same thing is true, guys. They can't win an election without black people. I don't care how you cut the pie. You cannot win an election without our participation. And the question is, what are we asking for what we give? Because how the system works, when we make money, we pay taxes. And they don't say, hey, because you black, you ain't been participating, we're going to give you a 50% cut on your taxes. That
Mm.
doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no discrimination when it comes to collecting taxes. There ought to be no discrimination when it comes to contract. And we got to get smarter, and we can't divide ourselves against us. And we got some incredible legislators, but we need their help to make sure that in that $55 billion budget that we're included. You got LG Sims, who's the budgeteer. He's got to make sure, from my perspective, that people got to say, make sure you cut us in. We need the brothers and sisters to be sensitive to our challenges. As we said, we got to ask for money to help businesses because we're spending an enormous amount of time helping black business, and they need a lot of help because the
Right.
numbers say it.
And speaking of help, because we've talked about the problem, the problems, the problem. Okay, we've talked about what we got to get, we got to fight, we got to, but we need some concrete direction. And what that falls under is my next question. Have we been building businesses that can survive without DEI, or have we been depending on it?
Yes.
No, I don't think we depended on it. I think we always have been moving forward. But I think the number of successes, because we have great firms that are, beyond the DBE,
Hmm.
they're so successful, they don't fall under the DBE guidelines anymore. And we need to have more and more of that. It's not enough of that, but
Right.
we have some of that. So we're making strides, but we also understand that there is just like Reconstruction, and Reconstruction see a lot of economic moving forward under Reconstruction. Then they had Jim Crow to take back everything that you could gain and take even more back. And
Hmm.
and that's what I see happening. We got to be careful of the trends because anytime any administration can take back the gains that you've made, and you got to be very careful. But at the same time, just because you're Republican or Democrat, all Democrats ain't good and all Republicans ain't bad.
Hmm.
Now, I would dare say that under this current administration, I don't see a whole lot of silver lining when it comes to black people. Now, if you decide you want to support Trump, hey, good luck with you on that one. And I know I'm a national leader, so I'm sure some people will call me and say, Larry, hey, you shouldn't take a position. But see, my position is always clear. I'm going to do what's right for black people and black business. I'm
Hmm.
never wavering from that. If I believe there is something that you were doing or a policy that you have that helps us, doesn't hurt us, then I can say I support that policy. But we ought to be policy driven. And the people, whether it be the governor, whether it be the Speaker of the House, any of these people in position of power ought to make sure that they're reaching out to the strongest black business voice in the state of Illinois, who's been around for over 30 years. And there's other great organizations, like I said, the BOC, Joseph Biz. There's a lot of great organizations out there. We got to come together and work together in order to make sure that people understand the facts. And we got
Hmm.
to support legislators who get it, and we got to not support legislators who don't get it, who don't fight for the things that are important. LaShawn Ford is now going to be going. Hopefully, he's going to Congress, and he's going to be hopefully a strong advocate, as Danny Davis was. But we got to continue to push our legislators to get involved and look at the numbers, look at the facts. And the fact of the matter is, guys, that black people and business are losing ground, not making ground, and
Right.
those are real facts.
Yeah, I mean, the facts, I think everybody understands the facts. But when you say LaShawn Ford in office. Hopefully, this. I mean, he is a stone throw away.
Yeah.
If you're not building relationships with these people, and all you're doing is making comments behind the scenes, you have nothing to say to them, then you're part of the problem. I think we need to really talk about how to solve the problem. We have not been building relationships as we should. There are so many people that can come together for a networking event or a day party, or and I'm not saying that's what our culture is, but because of all these problems and the facts, what is it that we need to do while the chamber is establishing, or should I say not establishing, leveraging the relationships that you've built or the chamber has built for over 30 years? Businesses need to do something too.
I think the first thing that I want to echo is that even though this is a chamber show and it's rightful to talk about our show and us, but we would be foolish not to understand our partners, the BLC and their leadership. They do a great job. You got Chicago minority supplier Dan Seal, who does a great job. There's the BCO. There's a lot of organizations. What we haven't done is come together collectively and talk to each other about the issues and the problems the way we should, so we have a united front, so that we can address the issues, that we can strengthen our own political pacts and support those who carry out the mission of Black business and who are sensitive to our voices. And we ought to give plenty of money to them. And for those who aren't doing that, we ought not to give money to them. You know, we used to give money to people because they requested it on the political PAC. I'm the chairman of the political PAC. Robert Johnson, Esquire, is the president of the political PAC now. And our goal is to raise $1 million in our PAC and then make sure we support legislators who understand Black business. And if you understand Black business, you got to know that Black business isn't doing well. That has to be a priority to understand or take time to understand what are the numbers saying. Because when you go from 5,600 BEP certified firms to 2,800, and you go from 2,500 African American firms out of that 5,600 down to 970, and this has gone on for 2 years, there should be an outcry so loud and so great that everybody has to stop and take. It's an outright attack upon Black business, Black wealth, and Black families. It's a correlation between economics and social impact. And so if we're not participating, and when we say, well, 50% of people are doing business who are certified, well, I got to challenge those numbers, because if you get 50% who are not longer included, that means that 25% of the people aren't doing business. You got the Department of Corrections, who is doing in my opinion, a terrible job when it comes to diversity and spend. The person in that position, people ought to have a conversation with her. They ought to ask, how come you're not doing it? When you've had opportunities to do business with people like Dr. Jeffrey Sterling and other companies, when you got the Internal Revenue, who made a decision not to do business with Mentex when they were qualified, someone got to call them, the legislature got to call them and say, look, you guys get a lot of money, but I don't see any diversity spend with you. And they got to talk to us so we can tell them very specific things. So when they get into a conversation, they can give specific opportunities that they can address, because they control the budget. They control the money that they get. That $55 billion budget is a budget, and they decide where that money is going to be spent. You know,
And we're hoping, we
they can
keep
say,
hoping.
like anybody else, they can just say, hey, well, guess what? The
Yeah.
chamber does great work. Let us help fund it. Let's give the chamber some money, just like we gave the Hispanic chamber money on a consistent basis. Hey, hats off to the Hispanic chamber, because they do a better job than we do. But they've gotten a significant amount of money every year, $2.5 million the last time I remember, on a consistent basis. And what have we gotten? Zero.
I want everybody to remember that this is the Wake Up Show Chicago, powered by powered by the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce, brought to you by the Wind Creek Chicago Southland. But along with that, this information it's critical in understanding it. We have to be able to vent when we understand the problems, but we also need to understand how to reach the solutions. We spend $2 trillion a year in the economy. It's close to 2 trillion. And if that's not coming back, then we're just basically working for free, right? Where it's I hate to go back to slavery, but
We're building white wealth.
we are. We're definitely building white wealth. But the one thing that I think about is whenever I swipe my card, who am I sending on vacation? Who's going to college? Who's putting money in their war chest? Okay? Because at the same time, we should be doing the same thing, if not more, on our end. So,
Yeah.
Larry,
And
those.
another, I would simply say we are not against white wealth. We just for black wealth also in this
Absolutely.
economy.
Yeah.
And when we take a look at the numbers don't show that. So we encourage everyone to understand that the chamber, even when you don't see us, you don't you probably do not understand that we're fighting. We're in meetings, fighting with people like Do It, like different agencies, pointing out the numbers, challenging them, and not always. We're not on the attack. We want people to give us the facts, and then let's say figure out how do we work together with IDOT? How do we work together with CEI? How do we work together with the Department of Revenue? How do we work together with Capitol Hill? We want to work together in terms of having a meaningful conversation, but it has to be started with truth about where we're really at and what's really going on. And then let's put our heads together and make Illinois the best state in the United States when it comes to fairness, equity, and inclusion. That's really what we say we want this thing to be about. That this more perfect union is an idea. A more perfect union is a concept, an ideal of the founding fathers. But now some people say, well, the founding fathers never included us. But the concept of their words, if we hold them to their words, that that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among those rights are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. You cannot be happy if you're broke. When I'm
Hmm.
broke, I'm just not the nicest guy. Okay,
Mm,
so broke people get angry fast. So black people are angry because sometimes they're broke. So
mm.
if you want me not to be angry, make sure I participate in this economy, and I'll be less angry, and I'll be a better neighbor, and everything else is good for all of us.
I
Okay.
love that. Well, I want to give you guys some actions, what to do this week. Number one, join the chamber. Go to ilbcc.org. Register when the registrations are open for lobby days, policy briefings, events, so that you can be at the table. Get on the list of agency meetings when we go to lobby day so that we know who's interested in what. And it's not just to say hi, it is to bring those issues and concerns. Join our committees. We have 12 committees. They're on our website, including retail committees, construction committees, energy committees. They're all listed on our website. And show up, whether it's virtually or in person, when bills, budgets, I'm not talking about like my bills, okay? I'm talking about those bills that are in Senate, in the House, and they're waiting to be passed, and you still have to get involved in what goes around those bills. Budgets and procurement rules, those are being shaped constantly, consistently, even when we're not thinking about it. And why does this matter, Larry? Well, when you come through the chamber, you're not walking in alone. You're walking in with numbers, strategy, access, and relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. Hey, we have a good fight in front of us, and this is a good fight. This is worthy of womanhood and manhood to be in pursuit of economic justice for us. And we have to, like you said, be transparent. People talk about transparency, but they don't really want transparency. When
Hmm.
you really get down to the numbers, if you would simply call us and say, okay, Larry, I heard what you said on the radio show. We want to talk to you about what you're seeing and what the numbers are saying. Let us help our data scientists and people show you what we see and why these numbers are scary and the impact that these numbers have. Now, some of us are doing well, and because some of us are doing well, we sometimes don't really appreciate the struggle of those who are not doing well. I think one of the great things about President Obama is that he not only, understood, from a principal point of view, and I listened to some of his comments he made. he was always talking about not just himself, but the people. When prices go up, he would talk about the big picture, talking about how this impacts people. When they asked him in an interview, what's your biggest challenges? He says the thing I worry about the most is the people in America and what they're experiencing with higher oil price and everything else. Well, we have to be a people who care about people, and our mission is that we care about black business. I mean, that's our mission. We fight for black business. If you're a legislator listening to us, you ought to fight for us, because if you fight for the chamber, you're fighting to strengthen black businesses. And if black businesses have more money, they can contribute more money to support good legislators, to make sure they stay in the position. It's a freedom paper, because we need to be contributing more, but we have to have more to contribute more. And if we participate at any reasonable amount, guys, we would be in much better shape. Our communities would be best. Crime would go down. This is just real basic common sense. And we ought to be united, and it ought not to be just about the chamber. It ought to be about Terry Simmons. It ought to be about all our partners sitting at the table, benefiting, doing their work, and not fighting against each other, but fighting with each other for the common good of the state of Illinois. Because anytime you have higher business growth and development, you got more taxes, you got more employment, it's good for the state of Illinois, it's good for America. So what we're doing is as patriotic as anything else. We're fighting for economic participation so we can strengthen the state of Illinois and strengthen the country.
I love it. Well, you know what? I got to get Lorenzo out of here. He's got this play that he's doing. It's called A Fall from Royalty. You're on stage today at what, 2 o'clock?
2 o'clock today.
Give me a line, man. Give me a line, man. Give me a line real quick.
I'm fighting in this scene.
He's doing fight scene. I think he's doing acrobats.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
guys, yeah, definitely.
You can punch LaDonna and see how that goes.
Ooh-wee. Look, I got a little bit in me.
So you got some
I
moves.
know.
All right, yeah, fight a
Hey,
fall from
LaDonna,
royalty.
nothing but love for you and Lorenzo and to our listening audience, man. We love what we're doing. Let's help each other. Let's make this state a better, stronger state for all of us.
I love it. Well, like that's what I was saying. We're gonna head over to A Fall from Royalty. Mm-hmm. Richard Gallion Entertainment, guys. It's not too late to get your tickets. Watch this. I'm taking my boys, okay, because this is historic facts about how slavery began,
Yes.
and the kings got together, and it was a big mess. So I'm taking my boys.
It's an amazing production. Amazing.
Absolutely. All right, guys, go to ilbcc.org. We want to thank you, Wind Creek, Chicago, Southland, for sponsoring this show each and every week at 9 a.m. And, of course, go to youtube.com and look for The Wake Up Show Chicago and hit subscribe. We love you. We'll see you next week. I'll see you Monday. LaDonna Raeh signing off. Bye-bye for now.
Voices break barriers and illuminate the path towards a more inclusive tomorrow. Follow us across the socials at The Wake Up Show Chicago. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. It's The Wake Up Show every Saturday morning at 9, where change begins with every sunrise. Welcome to The Wake Up Show Chicago.
That's the end?
The talk of Chicago is 1690 WVON, Berwyn.